my pleasure to introduce our guest today. His name is Alex Gage. He's with TargetPoint Consulting, which is a firm located in Alexandria, Virginia, that does public opinion research, but also voter targeting, micro-targeting, and lots of other campaign work. Mr. Gage has a long history in Republican politics and campaign management, especially public opinion research. He started working with market opinion strategies, if I get the name right, with Bob Teeter, who's a legend in campaign survey research. He's one of the, I think, 2 or 3 sort of founding fathers of campaign polling, along with Richard Worthland. I would put Bob Teeter as the top 2 on the Republican side, at least. And Mr. Gage is a pioneer in the voter targeting efforts that Republicans did so well in getting George W. Bush reelected back in 2004. That was, in some ways, the heyday. He's continued to work and consult for the Romney campaign and the RNC in recent years. If you have interest in campaign management and campaign consulting, I would strongly urge you to find a copy of this book. It's called The Victory Lab by Sasha Eisenberg. He's a journalist, and he has documented in this book the rapid change that has taken place in political campaigns over the last decade, but actually he goes back further in time. And there's an entire chapter in this book that talks about Alex Gage, by the way. It's a good one. Chapter 5. I read it recently. Anyway, Sasha Eisenberg, The Victory Lab. So it's a fun read, especially when you've met the guy that they're talking about and heard him talk about it in person. He's also notable because he knows BYU. And the way he knows BYU is he knows our students. And he knows our students because he's hired a number of them in recent years. So if any of you know Kyrene Gibb or Scott Riding has been gone a little longer, but Jordan Rogers or Jordan Staus, both of whom were around in the last year or 2, they're now working for Alex Gage at TargetPoint Consulting. And he's well equipped to tell us about why Political Science 328 is worth it and how it can make your life better in many ways. So I'll turn the time over to Alex Gage.
Thanks. So yeah, my background is, or my career has really been fundamentally in the public opinion survey research is where I started back then. When I was growing up and going off to high school, going off to college, I always liked politics. I always liked well, not just politics, but what would you call like a royal wedding or pomp and circumstance, right? And I lived in Detroit, and so we could watch TV on Windsor, so Ontario. So I'd get to watch things like the funeral for Winston Churchill or things like that, and it always fascinated me. I remember as a child also my dad taking me to a funeral of, I forget who, some big famous person in Washington, but pomp and circumstances. I wasn't necessarily attracted to the politics, although my father had a background in politics, and he actually ended up his career working for 2 guys from California who needed a wine association built in Washington, D.C. to make the world perfect for wine, and their names were Ernest and Julio Gallo. So in high school, one of my jobs during Christmas was to deliver cases of wine to state legislators that were on the Liquor Control Commission and lobby them. But I really liked photography. I thought I might want to be a naval architect. I love landscaping and growing things. So how the hell did I end up in politics? So I, in this thing here that it said, we're going to talk about careers and what I do and all that other stuff, but it says if you have other things of advice or so forth, to offer those up. So I went to the University of Michigan, in Ann Arbor, and graduated in December of 1972. I was a year later. I was supposed to have graduated in the spring. My wife still had a couple of semesters to do, so I had to get a job. It was an undergraduate degree. I got an undergraduate degree. My focus was in politics and not politics, but history, geography, and so forth. I wasn't really a major in a lot of political electoral behavior or anything. So I got a job as the head maid at the University of Ann Arbor Motel, and as a maid. 2 weeks later, they made me the head maid because all the other maids had left. And the people this was an old-fashioned motel right near the medical center in Ann Arbor, and the people staying in there were mainly people that had sick children or relatives at the hospital because it was the cheapest place to stay. People that came for an hour or two and left. And then a lot of PhDs trying to force their dissertations onto paper and so forth. So this is in 1973, I think now, or 72 anyway. So there's an article in the New York Times about Republicanism declining in Indiana, Watergate having an incredible negative effect on Republican Party. Do anybody here remember what Watergate was? But anyway. So I'm reading this article, and it references a polling company called Market Opinion Research and a man named Bob Teeter, who was quoted in the article saying recent surveys are showing people are moving away from the Republican Party and so forth. So then I went and got the yellow pages, and I looked up and called them and said, can I send you my resume? I might be interested in working there. Sure. Sent the resume and so forth, never heard from them. About a month later, I called them again. Yeah, well, send us an example of your writing. Okay. Well, called them. Well, come on up. Anyway, so in July, I think of 73, I went to work for Robert M. Teeter, who, as he said, was one of the original. He'd actually been the director of polling at the age of 32 for something called CREEP, which was the Committee to Re-elect the President. And he is actually had been hired by Ehrlichman was his name? Anyway. The weekend of Watergate, he had actually gone home to Coldwater, Michigan, and his secretary called him and said, don't come back, there's something going on. And he had, to this day, he's deceased now, but said that if he had actually come back to Washington, he figures he probably would have gone to jail too. His office was next to Magruder's, actually. So anyway, and so I joined, and one other side thing I want to say is my success, if there is any, a lot of it is because I had a mentor. He was just he would drag me everywhere. So I'm 26 years old. We've been hired to do the research for the Ford campaign committee, and so that's what I'm doing. We're doing focus groups, polling, everything else, going to meetings, having to take I'd come to work one day and they'd say, see this briefcase? Take this to the White House and only give it to these two people, Mary Ann Smith or Dick Cheney. Don't give this briefcase to anybody else. And it had polls in it that were showing that Ford was behind and Reagan was beating him in New Hampshire in 1976. Anyway, so, but Teeter was fantastic, and mentors are great. And part of what my success is I simply copied him. So I'd sit there and watch, and I'd copy him for 10 years, and then all of a sudden, what happens is experience leads to creativity. And you say, wait, maybe there is a better way to do this. Maybe there is. So anyway, those are just sort of some opening things I want to talk about. But mentors are great, and to the extent that people think I am one, it makes me very proud. So what I want to do today is give you a little insight into what our company does, where we are in the political sphere in terms of business, what we do, what products and services we provide. And it is fundamentally based back to political survey research. But right now, our major sort of products and services are called micro-targeting and data analytics and so forth. So what I'm going to do is give everybody a little quick brief. We've got a little more time on what micro-targeting is. And I want to begin to set the context of this with this article that came out, this is a couple of years ago now, I think, in The Economist, talking about the data deluge. And data is a very fundamental part of our political products and services. So the amount of information and data that is out there now is just so massive, and it is increasing exponentially almost daily. And Quinn and I were talking today. When I worked on the campaign in 2008, there was no Facebook. There was some Twitter. I mean, the world was totally different. And you've got to wake up every morning and say to yourself, wait, there's something I need to learn, that there's probably something that's changed. So this was a little chart that was in, I think, the Washington Post. And this is about data storage capability. So what it's saying is how much digital data storage capability is out there. I think the chart starts in 1986. I just put this up again to sort of get the inside of this data deluge that's going on. Now, what is very interesting about this chart is that it ended in 2007. So who knows what it looks like today. It probably wouldn't even fit. But you can see analog versus digital. I mean, there was a point where most of the digital storage information available in this country was on, what do you call it, Texas Instrument calculators. Does anybody know what this is? How many tweeters do we have in here? You guys tweet? A few tweeters? This is a tweet. At the top there, the circle, that's the actual tweet. Whatever little thing, what is it, 142 characters you're allowed to put in? All this other stuff down the side is all the other data that is actually on that tweet. Okay? I can't even read it, but it's like, where does it come from? Is it geography? It's just, I mean, I don't know. But it's again to understand that the amount of data that's being generated out there is just incredible. So data analytics, that is the big thing today in politics, is in both on the Republican and Democrat side, and not just in politics, everywhere. It's data analytics, data deluge, data, constantly mining and figuring out, is data telling me something I should know that's going to make me smarter? Now, when I started, this is my sort of narrative on technology. So when I started in polling in 1976, the teacher gave me what is that, a magnifying glass? And I could look at, oh, okay, women under 30 or this, and I could see, give me some insight. Then somebody said, hey, there's a thing called a microscope. Try that. Oh, okay. That made me a little smarter. I could see more. Oh, there's another microscope. Oh. Now that's today. And what you can do and see today, oh, really? I never had any idea that existed. So how did micro-targeting and this sort of data, what I call the data arms race in politics, start that we're involved in? Well, in 2003, right after the 2000 election, when obviously Bush narrowly, well, there's still some debate whether he won or not, but narrowly won. They had sort of an internal task force called the 72-hour task force, and they listed 7 things they felt they had to improve on in order to execute better ground game campaigns. And 2 of them caught my attention. One is we don't have any good data. Our voter files, customer file, we don't have any customer files that are any good. And secondly, because of that, we can't really target and make our messages more surgically targeted, that this person should get that. All the messages were simply, a phone call taped from Ronald Reagan saying it's very important and civic responsibility to vote, and not saying you better go out and vote, because if you don't, the number of abortions in this country is going to go up by 15%. I mean, trying to really motivate people. So we did this. So I went and convinced the Bush people to invest in this thing called micro-targeting, and we built 14 complex databases in the 14 swing states. And this was an article in the Washington Post in January where they said, look, the 2.2 million relatively too small expenditures by the Bush campaign stands out for their impact. 546,000 ad buy by the Swiftboat veterans, and the Bush campaign's 3.2 million contract with TargetPoint, blah, blah, blah. And that started it, and I convinced them, and I think it was very important for us in winning Nevada, Ohio, and a few other very close states. So that's 2004. 2008, Obama campaign relying heavily on ground effort. And this talks about how they advanced and built a more robust ground game and micro-targeting and so forth, and did a better job than we did probably. And there's the article 4 years later. And how Obama built this incredible sort of data lab, if you will, in Chicago to really advance their targeting tactics and techniques. And there's no question that they really built a super thing. And a lot of that was because when you're an incumbent running for election, you have more venture capital available to you. So clearly somebody came to them well before the campaign, or not well before, but as they were preparing the re-election campaign, said, we want to build a data lab. Okay, how much? Okay, we'll take a chance. Maybe that'll make a difference. But again, in this world today, it's linking all this data. In a minute, we'll get into actually what micro-targeting and data analytics is. Oh, I love this one. This is another inside the secret world of data crunchers who helped Obama win. So in the spring, the backroom number crunchers powered Barack Obama's campaign to victory. Notice that George Clooney had an almost gravitational tug on West Coast females 40 to 49. The women were far away the single demographic group most likely to hand over cash for a chance to dine with in Hollywood with Clooney and Obama. But that's the sort of thing. I mean, I don't know how many there are. Maybe there were only 35,000. But they did that, mailed them, and sure enough, raised more money. So that's what this is all about. It's all about information, integrating it, and then figuring out what the hell it means. So micro-targeting, I'll just give you a little basic concept. It is technically just an analytical process, a statistical process. It's like multiple regression or whatever. And it just basically uses existing thing. But the underlying fundamental concept of it is data integration. And what we learned is that there are data islands all over. So I've got information on the voter file that, when did you register? Are you a male or female? What's your birth date? Did you vote in the primary last Saturday, in the primary election for school board? Did you, I know some of that. I know you live I know where you are geographically and so forth, but I don't know much more about you. I know you and your neighbors voted X percentage for the Republican or the Democrat. But then what we do is we take out and we go out and we try and find every piece of information we can about you. Are there children in the house? What is your lifestyle? I mean, all this stuff, household data. The biggest is we go to these companies like Axiom that have all the consumer information out there. So actually, every time you fill out, let's say, a warranty card for your computer, Apple sells that data to this company. If you take a cruise on a Caribbean, the Caribbean Cruise Association has you as, these people actually cruise every 3 years, or that data. And it's all legal, because you have actually, those little slips of paper you get in your bills and stuff, you ever read your little privacy stuff? Or it's basically saying if you don't opt out, your data is our data, and so forth. So anyway, there's just all sorts of information. But what I don't know about you, so I can put together all the data that I can find about you, but I don't know whether you are, your political attitudes, your voting, and I mean, I don't know. I mean, I see that you and your neighbors, 55% of you voted for the Republicans and 55 Democrats, but should I really score you as a Republican? Probably not, I don't know. So what we do with micro-targeting is, so we'll take, let's take a state like Ohio, 7 million voters. We build the integrated file. We take and put every piece of information we can find about you onto the file. Then we actually pull a sample down and interview about 5,000 to 10,000 people and maybe ask them 20 questions. If the election were held today, would you vote for this? How do you feel about this issue? How do you feel about that issue? Et cetera, et cetera. And then we put that data onto this, for those people that and we only interview, we have to complete the interview with the person that we have designatedly pulled so that we know that we are exactly, have your attitudinal data and then all your other data is for that person. And that actually enables us to target individuals in a house, not just the household. But we could actually send different pieces of mail or do things to you or your husband or your teenage child, blah, blah, blah. So again, what we add to this is what we call high-quality survey research. Interview 5,000, 10,000 people and ask them basically attitudinal and behavioral questions on politics. Now, you guys all micro-target too, probably. You don't realize it. But if you see a Prius going down the street, it's pretty, you say, oh, I think they're probably going to vote for Obama. Now, we found one Prius that had McCain on it, but we actually had to Photoshop it. It's not real. Anyway. But what we're doing is taking hardware, software, and advanced analytics and just making this a little more sophisticated. So a lot of it is actually very rational. So, you know, if you're a white male over 50 years of age, the probability that you're going to vote Republican is probably around 56%. Then we discover that if you have an SUV, that jumps it to 59. There's evidence of religious material in your house. You live in Louisiana, and you're a member of the Chamber of Commerce. I don't know what that one actually in the last end is. But if all those conditions are met, the likelihood of you being a Republican is 94%. Now, if you're an African American, and this was before this election maybe, 32%, well, you have an SUV, blah, blah, blah. You like modern art, you subscribe to a modern art magazine. You live in California, blah, blah, 18%. So a lot of what micro-targeting is simply building these DNA codes of saying, okay, what is it? If this condition exists, then the probability of this person being a social conservative, this person being a Democrat, and so forth is 90%, 10%, and so forth. So ultimately what we're trying to do is to build customer files in every possible addressable way. So we can say, here, these are the people that you want to mail. These are the people you want to call on the phone. These are the people you want to turn out. These are the people you don't want to make sure anybody talks to. These are the people you want to tweet. These are the people you want to do door-to-door, so forth. Oops. So again, this is just the concept. So if I know that you are married, have a child, you like to sail, you watch BYU football, the religious material in your house, you like to ski at Brighton, occasionally hunt, you just bought a new house, you're a member of Sierra Club, you'd like to drink wine, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then I can predict what that means in terms of what the behavior or whatnot. And what is so nice about it is it allows you to, geography is no longer important. I don't have to, when we first deployed this in 2004, what it really enabled the Bush campaign to do was what we called search and rescue. So they could go into geographic areas that were primarily Democratic, but we knew that 30% of the voters in this geographic area were Republican or leaning to Bush. Historically in the past, they would never get a piece of mail. They would never get a knock on their door. They would never get a phone call because they were never part of the customer universe. And so that was one of the big things. And when we applied this in Florida in 2004, it was amazing how we were able to actually increase the turnout among unreliable or Republicans that were embedded in what we call sort of demographic geography. Again, so it's all about communications. Now, this is, I want to highlight and praise Mr. Scott Riding, who I don't know how many people know, but he joined our company about 3 years ago. And he said, I think there's a way we can get so that people can access their data if they want to. So he built a thing called Target Source, which is a web-based thing where you can go and you sign on. Let's say you've built a database in Ohio or Utah, for instance. So you build a database. How many registered voters do we have in Utah? 1.8 million. So let's say we have Utah here, and you want to go in and you want to extract or get a query the database. How many social, conservative, unreliable Republicans do we have, or whatever you want to go and search for or look at. And this allows you to literally go on and build spreadsheets and say, okay, how many people fit this particular criteria? So in this example, what, 400, so let's say these are, let's say across the top is your likelihood of voting. Down the side is your likelihood of voting, let's say. So there are multiple models. It's not, so you got to see this. So everybody has been coded on all sorts of models, whether it's voter turnout, whether it's partisan leaning, whether it's an issue, and so forth. So you can say, okay, I want high turnout Republicans who are socially conservative that are unreliable, blah, blah, blah. So again, I think I want to just get to questions, but to give you a sense of it. All right. So in our field of research, and again, ultimately what we're doing is providing campaigns and organizations with information to make decisions, to allocate their resources, and so forth. So that's sort of the sphere that we work in. And in the old days, it was polling. Yeah, you need to buy TV targeted at women under 40. You need to buy ads next to obituaries in the local newspaper because seniors are, so it was all that. It's just advanced so far. And again, when you read about what has happened in this last election against 4 years ago, the world changes so fast. As I told your professors, when I started in politics, Apple was a record company in London, and they don't even remember that. So anyway, so questions. I hope I just put enough fodder out there to maybe stimulate some questions and go from there. Yeah.
Do you guys market your services to like companies that are trying to target specific consumers?
Well, that's the area that we're trying to expand into. We have made proposals to Verizon on targeting. There's a war on Long Island between what was it, Fios versus I can't remember, but so we literally could say, yeah, see this house here on Long Island? They love sports. So if you go and tell them that you got Madison Square Gardens and you'll give it to them for less, they'll buy your cable network and somebody else's. So yes, we're trying to. But it's been hard. But a lot of this is already going on, I think, in the commercial, in the marketplace. I think, especially in the digital stuff, I think it's advanced. But so I think it's going on. We're trying to do that, but we've had trouble. Other than electoral campaign politics, the other political sphere is policy stuff. So our largest non-political campaign client is the American Petroleum Institute, who wants us, and we built for them what we call energy advocates. So in every state we can identify, here are people that if you need to reach out to them and have them call their senator or whatever. Now we got in trouble once because There was a woman that ended up in Florida in our Energy Advocate database, and she got a piece of mail on a phone call, but the problem was she was Senator Martinez's wife. So we said, well, I think that's pretty good targeting. She was, anyway. So she said, no, I can't call Senator Martinez. So a lot of policy. We were trying to sell. Walmart used it to isolate people in New York City that they could recruit to come to a city council meeting to support the authorization of a Walmart and stuff. I mean, so we've done Sandy, Utah. Got the years ago, Walmart did it in Sandy to get approval for the Walmart that they built down there. And some, I think some of the other. Oh, and then we did for some movie, for a movie company. I can't remember the name. And it was very neat. We could figure out, they would, you know, in movies, what do they call that? The chatter. When somebody, hey, have you seen that movie? You know, it's I can't remember. What is it? Trending? No, it's like when you, I mean, how do they promote movies? Sometimes they spend millions of dollars, right, on trailer ads and so forth. Well, we convinced them to try something else, and what they did is they actually had the people in the movie, I forget the names of the actors, do robocalls. And it was all to generate this pre-buzz. I get pre-buzz, maybe it's called. But anyway, so it has all sorts of applicabilities to it. And these were years ago. And I guess, as I was saying today, we're just so feel very stressed that we got to make sure that when we started this, it was mainly about your phone, your addressable was what? Your phone, your mail, and your email. There was no Twitter, there was no social or anything else. But now we've got to figure out how to get to you in all sorts of ways. And I forgot. Anyway, yeah.
What do you enjoy most about the work you do, and sometimes do you feel a little overwhelmed just by talking to the mic? So I just wanted to ask, what is it that you enjoy most about the work you do, and sometimes is it a little overwhelming just dealing with all the data?
Yeah, and what's happened is that, I dealt with that like when I started this 8 years ago, but now, as I said, nobody works at our company is over 38 years of age. And I think that actually 6 of the 10 people are under 28. So the key is, in my mind, and yes, it can become overwhelming in trying to figure it all out. Like we're trying to figure out, is there a way to get, there are companies that are saying that they'll give us your cable box data, that we could actually add. So you saw that, the concept of integrating data. Well, what if I had data that I could, see exactly what it is you turn on and what you watch, what you don't watch? And, so yeah, but yeah, it can become very stressful, and that's the challenge. And the challenge is, and it is interesting, nobody, well, and there's some new companies emerging in the digital space that are data analytically based too. There's like, on the Republican side, it's called Targeted Victory. And a guy named Zach Moffett. I can't know on the Democrat side. But the thing that really was fascinating to me and what triggered a lot of my thinking in going into the 2012 was we were getting, somebody on our staff was collecting the job description offers from the Obama campaign when they were building the data lab out. And they were looking for data scientists, mathematicians, software programmers. It's like, whoa, They weren't, looking for former executive director of the Utah Republican Party or Democrat Party. It was fascinating. And right now, some of the other people I deal with, like every company now realizes there's got to be, and I bet on the next wave of the next presidential campaigns, and maybe on the Obama organization that was already, there will be a senior person called the chief data scientist. There'll be the chief data scientist, chief legal, it'll be a whole separate entity within the campaign process, as it is in all these companies today too. Yeah.
With all of the data that you gather, do you personally have concerns about your data being misused? And if so, do you take any precautions? Anything
You mean people getting access to our information?
No,
mean-
like you personally. I'm just thinking, should general people be thinking this is scary that they have access to this data, or should
Oh, I don't
people
know.
just think?
So you're saying yes? Is this societally good or bad? Good question. I don't. To me, I usually respond to say no. We do have in place. What do I want to say? There's knowing more about you and being able to communicate with you in a more effective way and to provide you with relevant and salient information. Is that good or bad? I don't know. Now, we do not come anywhere close to violating any, privacy issues or whatnot, and we have extraordinary data security rules so that this data doesn't get somehow stolen off a server and used and so forth like that. But I don't know. I mean, as a society, the whole issue of data privacy has sort of not been, what do I want to say, at the top of the agenda in the last few years. It may come back, though. It comes and goes. Wasn't there a big fight about a year and a half ago, Google and all that stuff? Remember the day Google shut down for a day or something? It is scary stuff, especially in the digital world. What was that book that was written a few years ago about, I forget, but if I go onto Google and I type in, celery potatoes, and you type in celery potatoes, we get a different response, or a different, so it is, and I don't really understand all that stuff, but.
I'm curious about the effectiveness of micro-targeting, especially at different levels. So when you engage in a micro-targeting effort in, say, Ohio at the presidential level, and do you have some estimate about how many points you can increase turnout or increase the marginal that your candidate is likely to get, and how that compares to, say, some local race or something like that?
Yeah, we have some proof of performance data that shows that indeed under the on the micro-targeting, let's say that just a smart target that I've said, okay, I want to send this piece of mail to, I want to send this, what do they call it, a patch through. You ever heard of patch through calls? Like if you get a phone call and say, hey, will you patch through and can I patch you through to your congressman or whatever? So on a lot of issues, we'll find that, let's say that the average patch through on a targeted, let's see if I just took registered Republicans in the state of Utah, but then the second universe was registered Republicans micro-targeted on a particular issue of tax reform or whatever, that we find that usually it might go from let's say a 2% response rate to 5 to 10%. So there is actual data that shows that it does work. And in Florida in 2004, we actually went back and took all the people that we had micro-targeted and so forth and went and did they vote, did they vote in 2004, and found that those people that we had coded as unreliable, well, we actually took the data, I forget, but anyway, we showed that among people that were coded as unreliable, the percent turnout increase from 2000 to 2004 was 15% among that universe. Among those people that we actually coded as reliable Republicans, meaning that the data actually showed that zero, or minus 2% in change in turnout between 2000 and 2004. So, yeah.
So it seems to me that indicators that create a voter profile, or at least indicators that create more effective voter profiles, are constantly changing. Do you have a department within your company that is in charge of all this innovation on what to research, or is that your entire?
What do you mean,
company?
like,
So, for example.
so I've got information on you, and let's say that, well, but I want to,
Like, what if the car that I drive stops being as effective of an indicator?
because you've switched cars?
Or, yeah.
It is updated, but the other question is to the extent that our data sources are updated. So what I want to say, we feel, yes, it's very important to constantly, if you move, well, not moving isn't a good example, but right now, that sort of, that updating process does not happen on a real-time basis, just by the nature of politics. Like right now, if the Republican or Democrat they would have a budget and they would be doing confirmations on, they'd be building their data constantly and so forth. And in politics, what happens is people say, well, we have to worry about that until June of the election year, so it's, but we're constantly trying to find ways to update the data and to make sure that the data is constantly, evolving. The other thing that is going to emerge, I think, and it may have already in the Obama campaign, is what we call this sort of data hubs, so that data is constantly flowing in. So if you contributed money yesterday online, that gets in there. If you were at a event, it's just constantly keeping track of any time you're touched. And that's what corporations do. So now think about it. How many of you have Apple, so forth? So, if you go to iTunes and you say, I want to buy James Taylor, and within seconds they send it back and say, well, you already bought that. Do you want it again? Or, it's real time. And I don't really totally understand. I actually would love to figure out how they do that. I won't notice, but anyway. I lost track of what I was saying, but anyway. Any other? So do you guys like politics? Well, I think the other thing that's sort of fun about it, I think, it's fun and stressful, is that there is the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November. And if you don't meet your sales goal, you can't say, maybe I can make it up. So the competitiveness of it and the time is a very sort of stimulating thing and very stressful. As I tell people, political campaigns, if are like running up a cliff at a very high speed, and then all of a sudden you find yourself at the bottom, sitting there, win or lose at the cliff. And it's a very, very interesting thing. And the other, I'm just it's just observations out of fun here, is that you do, there are good, I would never in my mind possibly think of personally running for public office. I think they're all crazy, all right? But having watched and sat at tables or watched for over the years, there are some very, very good people that are there that come into politics. There are a lot of bad people. There are a lot of, but there are a lot of very good people, and it's on both sides too. It's a very interesting. As I said, it beats working at the power company. So, yeah.
I wanted to sort of, I know it's been discussed ad nauseum probably on the political punditry side for the last month, is to talk about the difference between the 2004 election where you guys were able to sort of use micro-targeting much more successfully as compared to 2012 where the Democrats just, you know, what was the difference and why? And then the second question is how does your firm deal with super PACs and non-collusion? So like when you're working with
Right.
a candidate and you're also working with
Okay,
super PACs,
so
how do you keep those separate?
yeah, question one was the data. The data was basically the analytical process and the things we did in terms of enhancing the data and making it more valuable. We're quite honestly, we're better at it than we were 4 years ago and 8 years ago, but the process is the same. Here are the 55,000 people that should be this and that and so forth. And I think both campaigns had access to high quality enhanced data. I think the difference was the actual, what the hell do I do with it? And it's the actual tactical execution of if you will, of the actual marketing effort that, you know, how do I communicate and so forth. So it's the execution, I think, that's the most important. And that's what I'm so what did Obama do with the names or with their customer files that Romney didn't? And I don't know the answer to those. Question two was?
The super PAC question.
Super PAC. All right, they're legal issues. So we have to create this is from a business internally legally, we have to create what we call silos. Because the law is all about, well, you can't work for the Romney for President campaign and the super PAC campaign because the fear is that you would be communicating information. What is the actual term they use? Coordination. So, okay, I don't need to do this mailing because you're going to do this mailing. I don't need to turn these people out because you're going to turn those, and that's illegal. So we create these silos where we've got senior staff that cannot work on any Romney project, one that cannot work on any super PAC project or so forth. So that's the way that works. And the media buying firms do that. I mean, it's a thing. Yeah, I personally, I don't know if the campaign finance stuff issues will come up, but I'm always been someone who, anytime you try and reform it, politics is lifeblood, money is lifeblood. You can't. The money will find its way in. Like, you know, so after Watergate, they did all sorts of, you know, changing. So the super PAC thing this year, if you think about it, all right, so in 1968, if somebody got on a plane, went to Chicago, and I forget the guy's name, he was some Clement Stone, you went in his office, you picked up a black briefcase, you've heard of black briefcases, it had $2 million of cash in it, you'd get back on the plane, you'd go back to 14th Street, and you'd put it in the safe at the committee to re-elect the president, okay? And you didn't have to file any report of where it came from or anything else, right? And so this year, you know, the Cook brother, I mean, here, they were literally just handing out black bags filled with millions of dollars, right? And we actually knew that. I've always been a supporter of full disclosure and no limitations. If you want to take $5 million contribution from British Petroleum, fine. But you have to report that within 24 hours or you have a criminal penalty. If you want to take, I mean, I don't care as long, you know. And I think that has always been, full disclosure and unlimited. So, but that's that. But politics is fun. I mean, I'm glad I ended up in it rather than the landscape architecture or the photography or the naval architecture. It's been worth it. And as I said to Quinn and others, having prepared for this really was actually a very enlightening and sort of reflective thing on my, I'm not going to tell you, but I guess you can figure out 30-some years. Yeah, we used to be able to come into campaign events through the back door in 1976 if we put on those aviator sunglasses because we would assume we were Secret Service agents. So, I mean, it was a different world, you know, the security stuff. I mean, it was much more fun. And I think I actually have to start to sort of write down a little journal of little side stories or little stories from the last 30 years. Pretty funny.
Alex, it might be helpful to the students if you gave an assessment of employment prospects broadly in this area, polling, micro-targeting, and so forth.
Well, yeah,
in
so,
the growth industry.
yeah, polling, but it's the data stuff. It's the data analytics. And so, you know, I'm not a good, but who are the companies? There are all sorts of, well, as I said, almost every company or every campaign are looking for data scientists, data analysts. And it's not just, you know, nerdy data guys. I mean, data analysts is, what I'm trying to say, it's a lot of it is thinking of, okay, this, I mean, but anyway, the polling firms, all the digital marketing, political firms, media buying. I mean, I would say just every sort of sphere of political. So what? Direct mail, or direct marketing, telecommunications. You know, phones operations, polling, media buying, fundraising. All aspects are being the deluge of data of that. So it is a very important, I think. And I can't say that I want to tell you that, oh yeah, you got to take a course in SQL programming. You've got to do that. I'm not sure of all that. But I'm saying is that and there's still all sorts of other opportunities in politics too. I mean, we still need speechwriters, and we still need thinker. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff. So,
On the data side, what is it that tells you when somebody applies for a job? What are the kinds of things that jump out to you that tell you that they're qualified as an entry-level employee?
I don't know. Yeah. Well, what I learned in my career is that most of what I learned after I got a job. That, you know, it's amazing. So, you know, I took all sorts of courses and this and that, but it's a lot of that is actually, there's no question that learning is a daily process, and it just is, you know, every day you're smarter and brighter. And I don't know if I'm answering your question, but it's yeah.
Let's build on that. So assume that one of these students has gotten a job with your firm.
Mm-hmm.
What can they do to show you that they're going to be successful? What characteristics or attributes
Oh, really?
most matter to you in successful employees?
That's okay. Things that first of all, obviously, is to decide, are they wired the way that, you know, are they wired right in terms of the sort of the technical stuff? Then I always like to.
How would you know that? What would you look for to know that they were wired right on the technical side? Just general competence and.
Yeah, I think so. General competence and we look, you know, we like to see that they know how to use Excel, or they know how to use SPSS, or what's the other, Stata. I mean, they're clearly basic stuff like that. It's interesting, you know, we're more and more asking the concept of programming. Do they understand what programming is, which I don't even understand. And then the other thing, I like people, and it's hard to necessarily know this from there, but I like people that will actually say, I didn't understand what you said. I hate people that walk out of the room And I'm saying not hate, but I love people that are just willing to, no, I don't, because I don't even know what I said. Right? No, I'm saying, but anyway. So I like that. And the other thing is, it's very important. And again, you get some insight into it when you talk with people and read and so forth. A lot of it from references and so forth. But I like people that can work with people. I think it's a very important trait, especially in politics, because it is not. It is a very collaborative thing, and so forth. And I like to have people that work for me go their extra mile or extra length or make sacrifices because they like me, not because they're afraid of me telling them they're and because over my career, things people have done for me. I had when I was at my original company, another person, his motivation was always to motivate people out of fear and concern, and mine was the other. And I know totally that I got better results than he did.
Speak for a minute about the cyclical nature of campaign work and what that means for the hours that you're required to put in. Per day or per week,
Yeah.
and how that affects your ability to have a normal
Life.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, there's no. All right, so cyclically, it is cyclical. So you work 8 hours a day. So let's start January 1st of this year. You'll work an 8-hour day. You'll have a little more time to read and learn things, or maybe take a course and this or that and so forth. But by June and July, well, we'll also immediately be out there trying to. That's the other thing about politics from a business standpoint, is that your clients, win or lose, go out of business. So you've got to always constantly. It's not like I'm working for the local utility company and doing their customer satisfaction study every 3 months for the last 10 years. I've got to go out and, build a whole new customer base and so forth. So there's a lot of that going on. But then I would say that in 2000, but here's what we're trying to do. We're going to probably in the next 6 months try to convince political candidates and political organizations that the data process, whatever we're going to call it, needs to be something that you don't wait to do. That's the conversation we had earlier. We don't have to do anything about that until June of 2014. No. Why don't we take all let's say you're getting ready to run for re-election for the United States Senate. Well, why don't we take all your volunteers from last time and all this, and why don't we start to, build a database. Let's start to reach out. We don't have to necessarily reach out and ask them to send you a contribution, but let's touch them. That's the very interesting thing about politics, is if you think of your universe as customers, right? Well, you want to take care of your customers. You want them to be loyal. You want them to be more valuable to you and so forth. So you should be touching them more. And in politics, we don't. So I would argue that there should be a more, ongoing thing.
I think we need to wrap it up.
Sure.
Why don't we give Alex a